Hello and welcome back everyone, I'm Brandon, this is Born to Rant, and today we are here to talk about a movie that captures the essence of its source material while completely ignoring most of its story, and a movie that gave us one of, if not the best, soft rock soundtrack ballads of the entire decade. That's right, today we're talking about how 1993's The Three Musketeers came to be, recapping the movie and everything that makes it awesome, and its legacy 30 plus years later. Starring Chris O'Donnell, Charlie Sheen, Oliver Platt, Kiefer Sutherland, and Tim Curry, The Three Musketeers was a movie that I was fully obsessed with as a kid. So much so that I made my mom make me a Three Musketeers sweatshirt inspired by the tunics they wear in this movie. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures of it, so here's a cute picture of my dog instead. But seriously, this was a movie that I owned on VHS as a kid and would watch on repeat. It had everything I wanted from a movie as a kid. Sword fights, explosions, good guys that were funny, tough, and fun to root for, a lot of costuming that would catch the eye, and even a couple of moments that made me feel just a little scared. And in revisiting this movie, I was really surprised by what things still worked and held up and what things didn't. For example, I think this movie looks absolutely incredible. Cinematographer Dean Semler makes this movie feel like a painting come to life. This shot in particular is one I wanted to call out early on because I mean, just look at it. It literally looks like a painting, and it's not the only shot in this movie to look this pretty. But before we get too deep into me waxing over how great this movie is, let's go back and talk about how this movie came to be and how it was received by audiences in 1993. Interestingly enough, the production for this movie begins with a lawsuit. Seriously. Disney and Columbia were separately developing adaptation of Alexander Dumas's novel from 1844. And in 1992, Disney purchased a screenplay for The Three Musketeers from David Loughrey for $650,000. But the thing is, Loughrey was originally hired to write the script for Columbia. So this led to Columbia producer Brad Wyman accusing Disney of stealing Columbia's IP, and then he sued them for it, and the matter was then settled out of court, so who knows how it all ended up shaking out. But Columbia went ahead and canceled their version of the movie, so Disney got straight to work and brought on Stephen Herrick to direct. He was coming off of a fairly crazy first 4 movie run of Critters, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, and The Mighty Ducks. Which makes him kind of an interesting choice for this movie, right? Coming off the back of doing 4 movies that I would broadly call comedies. For his big follow-up to The Mighty Ducks, Disney gave him the reins to an old-school action-adventure movie with sword fighting and carriage chases. And honestly, I think he did a pretty good job with this movie as far as directing it goes. But then again, he was working with Dean Semler, who's no slouch when it comes to shooting action, having already done Oscar-winning work on Dances with Wolves 2 years earlier. He also shot The Road Warrior and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and even had already worked with both Charlie Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland on both of the Young Guns movies. So even though Herrick didn't quite have the action directing experience, he was teamed up with a guy who'd been shooting amazing action sequences for well over a decade. Okay, let's get back to talking about how the production of The Three Musketeers came to be. As for the casting process of this movie, it sounds like it was very messy and kind of confusing. For example, Disney originally really wanted Charlie Sheen to play Porthos, but he would then go on to play Aramis, and Oliver Platt would play Porthos. Brad Pitt, Stephen Dorff, and Brendan Fraser all turned down the role of D'Artagnan, so Disney went with Chris O'Donnell, who was fresh off of back-to-back hits School Ties and Scent of a Woman. And then the cast was rounded out with Sutherland, Rebecca De Mornay, Michael Wincott, and Tim Curry as Cardinal Richelieu. And with that, they were off to make the movie. So, with a budget of $30 million, cameras started rolling on April 26, 1993, with the movie primarily shooting in Austria. Actually, it's shot in the town where Rebecca De Mornay grew up and went to high school, and that's just like the ultimate power move. And my favorite little behind-the-scenes factoid I found while doing research for this video is that O'Donnell, Sutherland, and Platt all did 2 full months of fencing and horseback riding training to prep for this movie, but Charlie Sheen had to miss out because he was too busy filming Hot Shots Part 2. And knowing this now when I watch this movie, it's so obvious. Sheen is almost never using his sword and is almost always disguising himself and then punching people. Seriously, it happens multiple times in this movie. So then in September of 1993, Disney did one of the most Disney things it's ever Disneyed and announced publicly that early test screenings of the Three Musketeers had the most positive responses they'd ever received for a live action movie, which of course caused the excitement and hype around this movie to soar. But then 2 months later, the movie came out and people did not really like it. It currently has a 30% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Not that Rotten Tomatoes or critical reception is the end-all be-all of if a movie is good or not. It's just an interesting metric to mention and look at so we can understand the context of how the movie was received when it was first released. And my favorite part about the reception for this movie is that Leonard Maltin kept calling it Young Swords because of the reteaming of Charlie Sheen, Kiefer Sutherland, and Dean Semler. But I think if he was really clever, he would have gone with making fun of the reteaming of Sutherland and Platt and called it the Three Flatliners or something. Get it? Because this movie was dead on a... You know what? It doesn't matter. Moving on. The movie was released on November 12th, 1993, and even though critics didn't like it, it did pretty well at the box office, making $11.5 million against its $30 million budget on its opening weekend, before going on to make a worldwide total of $111 million. Okay, one final thing before we dive into what makes this movie awesome and talk about its legacy, we have to talk about All for Love. All for Love was written specifically for this movie by Mutt Lange, Bryan Adams, and Michael Kamen, who did the score for the movie. And these guys thought it would be really clever if they got 2 other guys to sing on it with Bryan Adams so that it would be like their own version of the Three Musketeers. So they got Rod Stewart and Sting. And look, some of you might be expecting me to make fun of this song, but how can I when it undeniably rocks? Plus, Bryan Adams, Sting, and Rod Stewart are all badasses in their own right, and together they do it all for love.
Let's make it all fun, all for love.
Okay, let's talk about the movie now. So in rewatching this movie, I was kind of shocked by how early the nostalgia struck me, because the very first note I jotted down when watching this movie was, man, I miss the Caravan Pictures logo. For real though, this movie holds up surprisingly well in some ways, like I talked about Dean Semler's cinematography earlier, but I just want to call it out again here because even this opening shot looks better than anything in modern movies. And if you want an example, just look at this side by side from Freaky Friday versus the upcoming Freakier Friday. My point is that the Three Musketeers looks incredible. This opening sequence with Tim Curry in the dungeon is just flawless. I mean, first of all, it just looks beautiful. And also, this is a real place in Austria called Seegrot, and is actually open to the public, and they have this boat and one of the cell decorations still up for tourists to take photos with. And you know how much I love when movies film in real physical locations. And let's talk about Tim Curry real quick. I mean, one of the best villains of my entire childhood. Cardinal Richelieu, Darkness, and It. And I'm definitely going to do a video on that miniseries soon. I have a lot to say about it. And anyway, Tim Curry is just fantastic in this role, and this opening sequence does a good job of letting us know who the bad guy is right away, and who his right-hand man is, Rochefort, played by another great baddie of my childhood, Michael Wincott, who maybe has the best bad guy voice of all time. I don't know if you guys can think of anyone with a better bad guy voice. If you can, let me know in the comments. But both of these guys are just so great at being bad in this movie. Like, you get the feeling they both genuinely enjoyed being the bad guy. They both even have evil guy mustaches that they could twirl if they wanted to. Okay, let's move on to the proper opening of the movie and our introduction to our main character, D'Artagnan, played by Chris O'Donnell. And this opening duel with him and Gerard sets up a lot for this movie right away. Actually, it's kind of impressive. First of all, French accents and languages other than English, not a thing in this movie. Pretty much everyone just speaks in their native accent, and I really don't think there's a single word not in English in this entire movie. I mean, other than the names of the French cities and whatnot that is in the dialogue. Anyway, the duel also tells us a bit about D'Artagnan right away. He's fairly quick-tempered, he's cocky, he's pretty good with the sword, and all he wants in life is to become a musketeer like his father. And then Gerard informs us that while D'Artagnan's father may have been a musketeer, he still failed to protect the king and died, making many people view him as a disgraceful coward. And anyway, all of this leads to an excellent horse chase through the forest, and I've always loved this little tree platform that they have to run over. I just think it looks cool. The sequence is just great, as is the stuff with D'Artagnan taking out the guys he thinks are bandits, but just end up being the Queen's bodyguard. And we meet Constance, played by Julie Delpy, and I just think this is a nice little meet cute scene. But in between those two sequences, we get the disbanding of the Musketeers, and again, Wincott just seems giddy in the pain he's causing other people. I love it. Like, this is probably the best moment of his entire life, and I love how quickly the entire Musketeer forces just fold and burn their tunics and leave their swords behind. Seems like a pretty big waste of materials to me, but what do I know? However, our three main Musketeers are not here for the disbanding. Nah, they figured something was up and decided to spend their days elsewhere. And alright, let's talk about our Musketeer intros. First up, we meet Kiefer Sutherland as Athos, who's pouting at Musketeer headquarters, which seems kinda ballsy, considering he's got to know that Rochefort is at the very least looking for him. And anyway, D'Artagnan shows up and is an entitled little baby about wanting to become a Musketeer, so Athos challenges him to a duel. Seems a little extreme, but hey, what do I know? I've never been a Musketeer. Next up, we meet Oliver Platt as Porthos. And I gotta say, it makes me a little sad that this is really the only time that Platt got to play a schmoozy, flamboyant ladies man, because he kinda nails it. I mean, I'm no expert on Oliver Platt's career, so if I'm wrong, please let me know, but I genuinely think he's great in this role, and this introductory exchange does a great job of setting up his character, and I still think the Queen of America joke is incredibly funny. So again, D'Artagnan kinda crashes into Porthos and is a little jerk about it, and then Porthos challenges him to a duel, and finally we meet Charlie Sheen as Aramis, and you have to remember this is like a decade plus before Winning and Tiger's Blood and 2.5 Men and just everything else. And anyway, Sheen's also a ladies man in this movie, but a classy, sophisticated one who abuses religion to try and sleep with married women. Okay, he didn't know she was married, but he knew what he was doing. And anyway, this little sequence of him jumping out the window is funny, and then he crashes into D'Artagnan. Kinda nice this one isn't D'Artagnan's fault initially, but he refuses to accept Aramis's apology because again, he's a little baby. So now he's got 3 duels scheduled in one day. But then we get a nice little scene with Curry being creepy as hell towards Queen Anne, played by Gabrielle Anwar, and then the king storms in and yells at him for disbanding the Musketeers, even though the king approved it, which is never really explained. And can anyone tell me why the king seems so scared of the queen? Like, anytime they're in a scene together, he gets so shy and weird. So Richelieu gets mad and yells at Rochefort, leading to a great little interaction between him and our 3 Musketeers, where we get some nice exposition and learn that Rochefort was once a Musketeer before being expelled. And I love Platt's little burn here asking,
Rochefort? Isn't that a smelly kind of a cheese?
But the boys got to get out of here real quick because they've all got duels that afternoon. So they take out Rochefort, first men, and head to their duel. And once they arrive, they're all shocked to learn they're all dueling the same person. And I like how D'Artagnan goes from being a cocky jerk to a total fanboy within the span of like half a second. And the Musketeers are all like, cool, but we're still gonna kill you. And then more of Richelieu's men show up trying to arrest our 3 Musketeers. And this whole exchange is great. Like I said, Platt just absolutely nails this role in the way he says,
Oh, don't be so stupid. Of course we intend to resist. Just give us a moment, all right?
and
Now, we are prepared to resist you.
are just great lines, especially with the latter having the excellent Michael Kamen score begin to swell as they all unsheath their swords. It's just a great little hero moment. I also just have to call out that Sheen and Platt somehow take off their coats to reveal their tunics in perfect unison in this scene. So the entire fight sequence that follows is just really good swashbuckling adventure filmmaking. It's a fun set piece. There are stakes, but not really. And we get to watch our hero have his first victory in front of his new heroes, but they still bail on him anyway. And then D'Artagnan does the dumbest shit ever and just like announces he's with the Musketeers even though they're gone and tries to charge Rochefort. Some real dumbass behavior if you ask me, because it gets him arrested. And while D'Artagnan is locked up, we get a number of important plot details revealed to us, like the fact that Rochefort has taken D'Artagnan's sword, and we learn it's because D'Artagnan's dad was the one who took Rochefort's eye, and it's heavily implied, though not stated at this point, that Rochefort killed D'Artagnan's father. And anyway, D'Artagnan quickly breaks out of his cell and overhears Richelieu's plans to overthrow the king and take over France, and that he's collaborating with the Duke of Buckingham, and this is where we meet Rebecca de Mornay as Countess de Winter, who's Richelieu's unseen spy lurking in the shadows. But before D'Artagnan can see the spy, Richelieu pretty much immediately catches him and orders him to be executed. And this next part is one of the few things that I bump up against the most in this movie. It just doesn't quite track for me that the 3 Musketeers would have found out about D'Artagnan's imprisonment and execution and been able to organize a plan all in the span span of what, like 12 hours maybe? But who cares? It's movie magic fun, and I don't like to be a nitpicker, but it's bothered me since I was a kid, so I had to call it out. And anyway, this entire breakout sequence from the execution and subsequent chase is incredible, and maybe the highlight of the entire movie for me. From the way they throw money to the poor people, to the way Kiefer Sutherland hands the reins over so he can drink a bottle of brandy, the whole thing is just a good time right up until they cover it in brandy, set it on fire, and push it into a bunch of explosives. And then we get what is hands down the prettiest shot in the movie. I know I already showed it earlier, but I'm showing it again because it's my video and I can do what I want, and I just love how the shot looks. Next up is our four heroes hanging out in a tavern, and it's a great bonding scene. Porthos and Aramis give D'Artagnan lessons on how to pick up women, and Athos gives him his very sad backstory about how he came to be a musketeer. He was a happily married count who one day discovered a branding on his wife's arm that meant that she was convicted of murder and sentenced to be executed. So he turns her in and then can't live with himself, so he relinquishes everything and becomes a musketeer. And I gotta say, Sutherland's performance here is strong. He delivers this monologue incredibly well. It's so even-tempered, but also just melancholic and sad. Not to play armchair therapist, but I have to imagine he was drawing on a little bit of the pain from Julia Roberts leaving him at the altar just a few years earlier. But then Porthos crashes into the table, ruining this sweet moment, so Athos punches him in the face, and I love this little smile nod thing that Sutherland does here as he takes a drink of wine after punching Porthos. It's just kind of pure alcoholic joy. But then the next day, the boys get attacked by cannonballs and chased by a big group of Richelieu's guys and have to split up. So then we get a nice little scene with D'Artagnan and Athos, who are maybe in the clear for a second and having a nice little chat about D'Artagnan's father, and then they're getting shot at. And Athos sends D'Artagnan onward to finish the mission, and he stays behind to take on the bad guys himself. And we don't see it, but he lives, so I guess he took out all these jerks by himself. Back at the castle, we get a brief moment of the king practicing fencing and confronting Richelieu's creepy ass, but for whatever reason, he just straight up takes Richelieu at his word and is like, cool, nothing sketchy going on here. Thank God his wife isn't an idiot. Shout out to wives. Speaking of idiots, we then cut back to D'Artagnan being the little baby he is, falling asleep and off his horse, only to be picked up by the one person on earth he would hope not to be picked up by, the unseen woman he heard at Richelieu's, who's there to deliver the treaty to the Duke of Buckingham. And she promptly tries to murder him when she figures out who he is and what his mission is, and this is where we get the big reveal. De Winter is in fact Athos's ex-wife. She's not dead, she's working for Richelieu. So De Winter and her boys grab D'Artagnan and they head off to meet their ship, only to find that the entire crew is dead, and Athos, Porthos, and Aramis are there to save the day. So Countess De Winter is arrested and sentenced to be executed, but right before she does, she breaks down and tells Athos everything about Richelieu's plans. I actually really love this exchange between the two of them. Their chemistry is really strong, and I buy all of their emotions that are on display. So now D'Artagnan and our musketeers understand the full scope of Richelieu's plan and make a plan of their own to stop it. And this montage sequence we get of all the musketeers getting notified that they're needed is one of the highlights of the movie for me. I just think the montage we get of all the hidden swords and tunics being broken out is awesome, and it's the exact kind of call to action you want in a movie like this. Plus the score swells here and it just rocks, and it hits that all for love motif. It just, the whole thing rules. Once we get to the king's birthday party where Richelieu has his assassination all planned out, and luckily D'Artagnan makes it up to the assassin just in time to take him out before the assassin can take out the king. Well, kinda. D'Artagnan and him then have a nice long fight after this, and it's pretty sick that it ends with Porthos sniping this dude with a handheld crossbow from like 100 yards away and 100 yards down. I mean, the kind of funny, stupid action that just takes this to the next level for a kid watching it. And there's just a lot of great stuff in this final sequence, like when the musketeers reveal their tunics, and Kiefer Sutherland yelling, "Save the king!" And that's all before we even get inside the palace. Once we're inside, we get Athos and Rochefort dueling, Charlie Sheen again not doing any sword fighting and getting shot but saved by his cross. So we then get the duel with D'Artagnan and Rochefort after Athos has been stabbed, and it's fantastic. Aside from this weird little flip move that is so clearly a stunt double and not Chris O'Donnell. And you just get the feeling that Wincott is playing Rochefort again as someone who just absolutely loves being evil and being the bad guy. Like the way he kind of smiles and dances around as they duel is something that stuck with me since I was a kid. And even when Rochefort reveals to D'Artagnan that he's the one who killed his father, you just get that he's taking absolute joy in that moment. And I've always loved how Constance slides the sword to D'Artagnan at the perfect moment, and then Rochefort goes from bad guy to dead guy. Then we move on to our final action sequence, our Three Musketeers chasing Richelieu down in the dungeons, which I think is a pretty fun set of sequences, and Platt's fight with Ugly has always been a highlight of the movie for me. Also, I just miss when kids movies kind of had these little flourishes of horror like this. My guy gets impaled on metal spikes twice. It's horrifying. And it's always been funny to me that this movie ends again with Aramis in a cloak, faking everyone out, and then punching the Cardinal. And that's the end of the Cardinal. He just gets punched into the water, and after that, we don't see him or hear about him again. Then we get our standard epilogue with D'Artagnan finally becoming an official musketeer, and then him and his boys chasing down Gerard, and we finally get to hear All for Love all the way through as the credits roll. So 32 years later, what is the legacy of Disney's The Three Musketeers? Honestly, it doesn't really have much of one. It's not one I hear people talk about all that often, certainly almost never in the context of being a good movie or an undiscovered gem, and that's kind of a bummer because I think for the most part this movie holds up incredibly well. Like I said earlier, the cinematography alone is the highlight of this movie for me. Every single shot feels so vibrant and real and lived in, and I love the way that Semler uses the lighting in the tavern scenes and especially the dungeon. And again, for the third time, just look how pretty the shot is. I also think the performances are fairly strong across the board. I think all three of our musketeers have a few lines of dialogue that feel a little too cheesy or the delivery just kind of feels a little off, but for the most part, I like all three of them. As for what doesn't work for me, the answer is Robin himself, Chris O'Donnell. You really thought I was going to go through this entire video and not mention him as Robin, didn't you? But seriously, I think he's kind of awful in this role. I mean, in his defense, it's not a great written role, but yeah, on this watch, every single time he was on screen, I could not stand him. Maybe it's because I'm an adult now and he's not really my audience surrogate anymore, but he just annoyed the shit out of me on this watch through. And I'm no Chris O'Donnell hater. I actually think Batman Forever is a pretty solid movie and he's decent in it. Okay, he's not awful in it. Okay, he's no worse in that movie than he is in this one. But again, overall, I think this movie held up, and for me, it was really nice going back and revisiting a piece of my childhood that at one point meant so much to me that I made my mom make me a tunic. Guys, we weren't even a religious family a little bit, but I wanted to wear that blue tunic with a giant white cross on it so bad. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Was this a childhood favorite for you too? Do you hate this movie? Do you love it? Also, how good is Young Guns? If you've made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. It truly means the world. This is Brandon from Born to Rant, reminding you to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And just a reminder, we are a completely independent channel. There is no AI used in the making of our videos. And again, we release new videos covering all of your favorite childhood movies and TV shows every Thursday at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.